Hello and welcome everybody to our next installment of the Double Six Finance Chat. This is the place where we teach you how to get ahead in life, whether it's finance, it's business, investments, or entrepreneurship. Every week or every session, we're going to feature a new topic to help the average person earn or reach the potential of a six-figure and a double six-figure income. So I'd like to welcome back Jimmy. He is Jimmy Wu is actually the founder of the Double Six Group, and our next guest for today is Jennifer Chan. She is a chartered accountant, CPA. She's owned her own practice in the accounting world for almost 20 years. Right, super busy individual with 4 kids. A big house to run. Honestly, when they say, how do you get things done? You ask a busy person. And I'd like at this point to just, bring Jennifer aboard and say thank you for joining us for a little while today as we talk about how, how is it like, okay, so first of all, I'm super proud to be Canadian that we have these Canadian relief measures put in place in the first place. They acted pretty quickly. But honestly, how effective are these government relief measures for the small businesses and for individuals, the average individual?
Well, thank you for having me on this Zoom cast. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, the relief measures, the lockdown has hit small businesses and individuals very hard, and the government has definitely stepped up to the plate and tried to take the brunt of that financial hit on everyone. And I certainly don't want to take away from the huge efforts that the government is making, but I do want to talk tonight about what small businesses and individuals are going through and what they're facing, and also some of that aftermath that might be happening after this lockdown is lifted.
Welcome, Jennifer, by the way.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you for having me.
So, in order for us to delve a little bit deeper into what it is, I realized that, on speaking with you and with Jimmy also, that the topic for tonight really is about the types of relief funds there are. And, one of them or two of them may affect anybody that, you or I know. And I guess in your case, being an accountant, where you help all manners of persons, whether they're individuals or they actually run small businesses. So the first one that I would like to actually just ask you about and what your take is the first one that I guess most people have heard of, because that's for the more of the average person, right? Is the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, where, a person can apply, they get $500 per week, which is really a one-time thing of $2,000 a month for up to 16 weeks. So, that's an up to $8,000 maximum. So can you, let us know what you think about that one?
Well, the CERB, I think everybody has heard of it. And, from the time that it was announced, really there was an application frenzy. You must have heard everybody talking about it. And so many people really just applied for it without making sure that they really qualified for it. But the bottom line is that not everybody qualifies for it. You do have to read the criteria and make sure that you swear that you meet all those conditions before you apply. And it's there in multiple places. But I don't know what it is, if people are not reading it, or, I just think that everybody wanted to have this money, whether they were qualified or not. So, the issue is that right now, the way that the government works is that anybody who applies will get it. Everybody is getting it. The government is giving it to everyone who applies, and they're not questioning anyone. However, once this is over, they will slowly audit people, and they might spot audit, they might audit everyone, and making sure that people did qualify for it. And that's why they're going to make sure that if people didn't qualify for it, that they will have to pay it back. In fact, right now, if you go to apply and you log into your My Account, right there in big and bold highlighted, it says click here if you want to repay your benefit, just in case some people realize that, oh no, I didn't qualify, how do I pay it back? They're giving people an opportunity to pay it back right now. So the maximum benefit is $8,000, and if a person didn't qualify and collected all 4 payments, $8,000, and after the fact they find out that they have to pay it back, surely that money has already been spent. And that's the issue, right? People are actually collecting and spending this money. So how will they pay it back? So this is potentially going to be causing people to get into further financial difficulty. And it's never good to owe CRA money, especially this kind of money, because they treat it differently when you never should have received the money in the first place. They treat it as it was never yours. So you need to pay it back now, right? So it'll be interesting to see how they do that, because usually they're pretty aggressive from the collections department with that kind of money.
Yeah, and exactly like you mentioned, Jennifer, how are they going to get that back, especially if in the first place it was so easy to apply? I believe there wasn't even an application. It's just you click two buttons, put in your banking information, and you can get that money, is what I heard. So
Yes.
very easy to apply.
Yes, it's too easy. It's
Right.
too easy, and people just did those couple of clicks and got it. In fact, I was talking to somebody not that long ago, just last week, and I said, "You're collecting the CERB?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "So, have you lost your income, or She said, "Well, my income was reduced." And I said, "Well, tell me how much you got in the last 4 weeks." And when we calculated it, it was well more than the $1,000 that's allowed past the threshold. So
Right.
she just thought that her income was reduced.
Right.
And that made her qualify. So I explained to her, I said, "You didn't qualify for it." And I said,
Right.
"You need to pay it back." And she was so worried, actually, that she actually paid it back as we were talking. She was already under my account, sending the money back to the government, not wanting to be in trouble, but that's the issue. People may wrongfully think that they qualify for it and don't know yet that they actually didn't qualify.
Right, and there is no penalty, is
Yeah.
my understanding. If you do owe the money, you're not going to be charged any interest or anything. So it also kind of gives you a sense of like there's a sense of encouragement to apply, because there's really no penalty. If they later find out that you don't deserve the money, then you need to return it, but there's no interest involved, from my understanding.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, it depends on the situation, I guess. And they also warn people, to make sure that they qualify. That's
Right.
why that's there, but it isn't, so easy to understand. Even myself have to read it like multiple times,
Yeah.
but people should really just check before they
Right.
blindly apply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other practical issue with that is that um, businesses are still open to some extent, and some businesses, and they need workers to continue to work, and they're facing a situation where the CERB in some cases is more than what they're paying their employees. So I have a situation where I have a doctor whose office is still open, and they don't need the full staff, so they're asking their staff, who can stay on to work. None of them want to stay. None of them want to stay because they're thinking, one, I don't want to be exposed to the virus, right,
Mhm.
in a working environment, and I can do nothing and stay home
Right.
and make more than what I'm making at work. So she has
Absolutely.
an
Yeah.
issue. None of them wanted to stay on.
So
Yeah,
very
it's almost
encouraging
like
them.
an encouragement. Yeah, encouragement that even if you don't work, you may potentially make more money not working than working. So
Oh my
uh,
Yeah.
goodness.
this incentivizes people to go back to work as well, because
Yeah.
they don't have any rules around that, right?
Oh
So
my goodness.
That's right, and it applies to a lot of the lower income earners. They are in that situation where they say, "Lay me off."
Oh no.
mm,
Okay,
Yeah.
so there are problems that we can sort of foresee now as it is and already ongoing, right? So another one of the relief measures is called the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that one?
Well, there's two wage subsidies. So the first one that they announced is that, they're trying to address the cash flow issues that businesses might have. So they announced a 10% wage subsidy on all payroll that's paid, and it's not subject to income or anything. But then later they announced a 75% wage subsidy, which is more attractive, but more difficult to qualify for. So even though the 10% wage subsidy is smaller, any business that has payroll can qualify for it. But the 75% one, it's harder to qualify because the business has to have experienced a drop in revenues of at least 30%. So it makes sense to me that they're trying to help the businesses that actually been hit the hardest you know, give them an incentive to continue to pay
This is an
people.
incentive for the business, right? Not for the, so the first one was incentive for individuals, but this is more for businesses, small business.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and also encouraging businesses that may have laid people off the option to actually put them back on payroll and get this 75% wage subsidy. So keeping people employed as well. So it is a very attractive one if businesses qualify. That's the problem, is that you know, some of the businesses that have been hit the hardest are the ones that have been forced to close completely. So there's
Right.
almost 100% drop in revenues, or close to 100. Some people have been able to do a little bit online, but you know, I have clients who you know, have lost 75 to 100% of their income because they had to close completely. You
And
know,
these are,
so when they lay people off, they laid everyone off because the business is closed, right? So 75% or 10% wage subsidy of nothing is nothing.
right.
So that relief measure isn't really helping these businesses at all.
Right. And these are more applicable for the traditional brick and mortar, like if you have a location and you're having employees,
Exactly,
right? And now
exactly.
that,
Like that's right. Like I have a couple of clients who are retail stores in malls, and even now, as they relax the lockdown measures and some stores can open, they are still forced to close. They're still among those businesses that are forced to close. So, you know,
and I imagine the traffic is completely reduced, even if they do open. The traffic of people going to these retail locations are tremendously reduced from what it was before this whole COVID-19.
Definitely, you know, it will be a recovery process, that's for sure. You know, the other stipulation for this is that even if a business does qualify for the 75% wage subsidy because the revenues did drop that much, you then have to look at each employee that you want to apply for the 75% wage subsidy. And if any one of them is collecting the CERB, then they're not qualified. Right? So this is where it ties into the CERB, because the employer really has no control over who has applied for the CERB and collecting it. So they and we talked about before how some people are applying and they don't qualify, but they have applied for it and they're collecting it. So take the situation where I have an employer who qualifies for it because of the drop in revenues and has 2 employees. And then I said, well, okay, the only one thing I need to know now is, are they collecting CERB? And she said, yes. I said, well, then I'm sorry. You can't get it. Right. You can't get it. But unfortunately, those 2 employees don't qualify for it.
They don't qualify, but they're getting the CERB, which and now the employer is not eligible for the wage subsidy.
That's right. So them getting the CERB, even though they're not qualified, is preventing the owner from, the business owner from getting the 75% wage subsidy. You know, and
actually does qualify.
Yeah, I mean, if the employees paid it back, then they could. But as long as they haven't paid it back, the employer can't get it. So, you know, that's the issue that businesses are dealing with, and there's nothing I can do about it because I can't, and they can't tell the employee, you don't qualify, go pay it back, because some of them are thinking that, you know, why should I pay it back? They're not even aware that they shouldn't have been getting it in the first place.
Right. Exactly.
So I wish that, you know, there was maybe just more clear communication for everybody so that everybody's doing the right thing. I guess there's another, you know, emergency relief method, I guess, that's out there. It's called the Canada Emergency Business Account. And it's a $40,000 interest-free line of credit for businesses. How does that work for businesses?
Well, you can imagine how many businesses needed this money desperately, especially the ones that closed, because when they forced a lot of businesses to close, that was about the 3rd week of March. So guess what happened on April the 1st for these businesses that were closed? Right. Their rent checks were cashed, you know, and so they didn't have the money. You know, some of those checks bounced, you know, and some of them, you know, were put in overdraft because that check cleared, you know. So these businesses that were closed were pretty much in desperate need of this $40,000 to help to pay rent, because even though you're closed, you may not have any payroll, but you still have to pay rent. So this was very attractive as a way to get a cash flow coming in to meet their short-term needs. Now, this $40,000 is an interest-free line of credit. It's interest-free until December 31st, 2022. And if the business pays back at 30,000 of it by that time, then the other 10 will be forgiven. And if it's not paid back, 30,000 is not paid back, then it will convert into a 3-year loan at 5% interest, I think, for another for 3 years, the whole 40,000. So this money was, as I mentioned, very much needed by the businesses, especially the ones that were forced to close. They have no revenues and still have to pay their biggest expense, which is rent. So when it was first announced, the criteria was that in 2019 they had to have payroll of at least 50,000. Well, many of my clients didn't have payroll over 50,000. These ones whose businesses were forced to close, so they didn't qualify. But then I guess there was a little bit of an uproar, and and the government then announced a couple of weeks later, okay, they reduced the threshold to 20,000. So some of the businesses that didn't qualify at 50 now qualified, but I still had some clients that were under that who still didn't qualify, right? So the issue is that I'm not sure why they made a connection between this money and which I have to assume that it was to help businesses pay rent.
Right.
Why they made an association with payroll?
Right.
Because we have businesses that where the owner pays themselves dividends. It's
Right.
not through payroll, right? Or maybe they're having a slow cash flow year and they decide not to take any money, not to pay themselves. So they wouldn't meet this threshold because of that, and it really doesn't make sense. So I really don't understand why they did that.
Right, because this 40,000 sounds like it should go towards rent, right? Because rent is one of the most expensive things as part of owning a traditional business. So if it's for rent and they're using it for that purpose, then it doesn't really make sense, right? I would imagine they would have set some criteria around if you own a physical location and you're paying a certain amount of money in rent, then you qualify for the 40,000 versus how you set up your business. Because essentially how you set up your business, you may be on the short end of the stick and not qualify just because you set it up and you're not paying yourself a salary. Is that correct?
That's right. If that was the intended purpose for giving businesses these funds, then it really should have been based on that, because now I have businesses that qualify for this interest-free loan that don't need it, but they qualify and they got it. And then I have businesses that really do need it, but they don't qualify and they didn't get it. So the other thing is that unfortunately, this excludes all sole proprietorships. And I have so many clients who are operating as sole proprietorships, because sole proprietorships, the owners don't pay themselves through payroll. They report that business income and expenses right on their personal tax return. They're not incorporated. So it kind of seems like they're being penalized for running their businesses as sole proprietorships. If you think about it, if they were running the same business, but they incorporated, and then they were drawing a pay through payroll through themselves, then they would qualify. That's the only difference. And so again, I just don't know why they made that connection. It just doesn't seem fair for these businesses that are operating as sole proprietorships.
Exactly. How you set up your business, basically, right? You can have the same business, depending on how you set it up, you would have not qualified. So
that's right.
It doesn't really make sense. Okay.
All right. Well, there's one more relief measure. It's called the Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance. That's the final one that we'll be talking about tonight, or we want you to, sort of explain to the rest of us how that is a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not knocking that we have relief measures. I'm honestly grateful that they put them in place, really. It's just, who are they really helping, right? And how?
Yeah, so again, much needed relief, because they obviously recognize that rent is an issue. And they're trying to, announce relief measures to help out with that. And so again, when they announced this, and this was just the tail end of April, it's actually not fully in place yet. But when they announced it, again, it sounds great, but this is how it works, that the program is actually offering forgivable loans to the commercial landlords, okay? And the forgivable loan is 50% of the rent of a tenant that qualifies. And this is for the 3 months of April, May, and June. So April has passed and May is almost over, right? In return for the landlord offering a 75% rent reduction to the qualifying tenant, okay, and agreeing to not evict that tenant during that 3-week period, as a 3-month period. So this was a big relief when it was announced, but if you read the fine print, it is a little bit flawed because it says that the businesses that suffered a loss of revenues of at least 70% would qualify, okay, but the landlord must apply for this forgivable loan and offer the tenant a 75% reduction. So if the forgivable loan only covers 50% of the rent and the tenant is paying 25%, then the landlord is actually covering 25%. So the landlord is taking a hit of 25%.
25%,
So
yeah.
that's right. So it sounds fair to me, but if you were a commercial landlord, would you want to take any hit at all?
Right. So this fourth one is for landlords to apply, right? So it's a landlord applied eligibility. But if you apply, you're essentially taking a 25% hit versus if you didn't apply, your tenant is still supposed to pay you the full rent.
Wow.
So why
That's
would people
right.
apply for a 25% hit? Right?
That's
Okay.
right. So, you know, as I said, if you were a landlord, would you want to take that hit, especially if you didn't have to, because they didn't make it mandatory.
Right.
Okay, they didn't make it mandatory. So, you know, so when they announced it at the end of April, what actually happened was it had the opposite effect. Landlords clearly did not want to take any hit at all. So
Right.
what they were doing was they were actually sending notices to the tenants, reminding them to pay their rent in full.
Okay.
Now, some landlords were trying to, you know, help out the tenants by offering, you know, maybe 50% of the rent being deferred till later. But to be honest, the lost revenue that businesses are experiencing, they will never get that revenue.
Right.
It's not like one day when they open, they will have double the income in that month to pay the back rent that they owed, right? So deferring it isn't really helping the business out. But this is what they were doing, and they were offering to negotiate a rent deferral. And you know, some of my clients passed those letters on to me, so I read them. And you know, one landlord gave them 3 days to reply. Another one gave them one week to reply. And all this while, you know, things are not fully in place for this relief measure. Even today, they announced that the application will open for landlords on May 25th. So very soon, but even now, it can't be done. But I noticed that on their site now, they have actually changed the wording, and they're trying to strongly encourage the commercial landlords to do this. Okay,
Right.
now they haven't said it's mandatory, but they actually, if you go read the site, it now says, why should a landlord do this? Because they said if your tenant is suffering financial loss and financial difficulty and they apply for bankruptcy, then you will lose 100% of the rent, right? So they're trying to tell them that it's better for you to take a 25% hit than to take 100% hit, right? Yeah, so I mean, it remains to be seen whether the commercial landlords will have a change in heart, but yeah, you know, they're really trying to convince the landlords to take a 25% hit to prevent tenants from actually closing up completely. But to be honest, we don't know. I mean, it remains to be seen. We don't know if they will do that. I have seen a couple of tenants, a couple of commercial landlords, luckily offering this to their tenants. So that's good to see, but not in all cases.
No. Well, because if it's not mandatory, then they're gonna just probably wait and see what's their best option, you know, after they look at their own numbers, right? So,
well, having said that, you know, I do have to hand it to the government because, you know, the government is offering to take 50% of the hit. Right. You know, so the government is doing a lot to try to help, but you know, it's very hard for the government to reach everyone, and I understand that, and that's why when they announce things, it takes time for it to put into place. And I'm really impressed at how quickly they have managed to put those applications in place. You know, so I have to hand it to them to try, you know, them trying to get the cash out to the people who need it the most. But unfortunately, due to the reasons that I have just explained, it hasn't actually reached everyone who is desperately in need of these relief measures.
Yeah. So it does look like that while, you know, we're very proud that there are these relief measures for those of the people who, and small businesses, of course, who really do need them. Unfortunately, there's a good portion in the, you know, category of small business and individuals who are really just not having their needs met. And I think it's just unfortunate that it's going to take time for everybody to sort things out, but we do have to be, sort of proud of our country for stepping up so quickly and for doing as much as they have. But, the bottom line is for me anyway, is to suggest that, you contact someone, especially who's been keeping your books, your accountant who has, who's in the know a lot, like Jennifer here, who has, their clients, whether you're individuals or you're a small business, truly taking into consideration all that's good for yourself and your small business. Do contact your accounting professional and see if they can help you understand what it is that you truly need before you go and blindly apply for something that you may not be able to, pay back. Or have some kind of penalties that we're not aware of yet, right? So yeah,
exactly. And hopefully, the lockdown will be lifted completely very soon, because a business can only go on for so long like this before they actually have to close forever.
Right. Yeah, my 2 cents is in traditional, but this is one of the, I guess, call it headaches of traditional business. You don't really realize it until something like this happens. And when it hits, you get blindsided by it, and you could be at a loss for months, right? Because of this whole COVID-19. So when you're looking for business opportunities, there's specific trends that you do want to look for. And we'll talk about this on another episode, but you do want to look for trends and how to reduce these type of headaches. I was actually, just to let you know, Jennifer, I was actually very, very close to opening a traditional business that was supposed to open in February of this year.
Oh wow!
Like a cafe type, restaurant type place, but luckily the deal fell through, right? Because if that had happened, who knows how much I would be in of a hole right now. Because
Definitely.
imagine
I
opening.
think somebody from up above was watching over you.
Yeah, imagining opening in February and then COVID-19 hitting in March and completely shutting down everything just as you open. That would have been a disaster. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So you got to count your blessings, right?
yes.
Blessings comes in disguise.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
So
you
we
might
do.
be, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
do.
do like have
Sorry,
to.
go ahead, Sheila.
Sorry, yes. So we do have to, definitely, take everything into consideration to the best of our abilities. Yes, it isn't the answer to everything, but really, really consult, professionals like Jennifer who can give you a better picture. And in Jimmy's case, I think truly just counting your blessings, it fell through, but you're now sitting okay, right? Because you don't have that headache of, holy cow, what do I do with rent on that place?
Absolutely. And if you are a traditional business owner, I would also encourage you into looking in additional stream of income and not just rely on just one business or one stream of income, because there is significant risk involved when you do that. So we'd love to have you. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming on the show. We'd love to have you back on a future session. And you're very business savvy and you own multiple businesses, so we would love to have you back to discuss your thoughts on, if you were to start a business in today's economy, what type of business would you look for and what type of trends would you follow? So that would be a very exciting session to have.
Well, I would definitely love to share my thoughts on that topic as well.
Awesome. So that will be a next session. We'll just have to get with you and plan that one. So again, thank you so much, everybody. Thanks, Jimmy, and especially to Jennifer, a special appearance, and to tell us all about what these relief measures have been, do mean to the average person, the individual, and to most, small businesses. And we do hope that, you get the help that you need, and that, we are very grateful. And hopefully as a community, we can just pull together and help each other, right? So thank you once again for joining us on the Double Six.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So watch for our future episode. Hopefully that'll be in a week or so. And this will be uploaded to YouTube. So look for us under Double Six and like and subscribe for us. Okay?
All right.
Have a good one, guys.
You.
Have a good weekend. Enjoy the Friday.